Welcome to the Innovative Pedagogy Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Garcia, and we have a great program for you today. Today we have several special guests, all from the New Innovation Division at the San Diego County Office of Education. My fellow San Diego Q board member and colleague, Pamela Rabin. Pam is a project specialist in educational technology. Dr. Aaron English, Executive Director of Innovation. Dr. Patrick Giddis Rembungo, Chief Innovation Officer. Dr. Mishan Hochter-Thompson, Coordinator of Educational Technology, and Dr. Alicia Gallegos Butters, Director of Educational Technology. The Innovation Division focuses on accelerating, scaling, and amplifying the number and speed of innovations coming from the county office. Today we get to talk about their experiences in education and the evolution of innovation within academia. So welcome to the show, everybody.
Thank you.
Of course, it's such really great. We actually get a chance to do this, especially during our quote-unquote summer break or summertime. But I definitely want to get started with a really cool icebreaker. And it's kind of silly, but I really want to hear what's your first memorable experience with innovative or a form of innovative technology. And once you state that, just maybe elaborate on why it blew your mind. So the question again is, what's one of your first memorable experiences within innovative technology?
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. This is Aaron English, and I was a fourth grade classroom teacher, and they brought in a Macintosh computer, this is 20-something years ago, and we were playing with Kid Picks.
Okay.
And it was the Kid Picks that you could move the mouse, and it would the cursor would bleed, and it would make funny sounds. And my friend and I, who was another fourth grade teacher, spent about a week playing with that program before we even let our kids get on it, because we were having so much fun. We were kind of addicted to it. But that's when I started seeing the engagement quality of what innovation could be, because to me that was where you could use a mouse to do things that happened without even the cursor being on them. And that was pretty fascinating.
Wow, that is really cool. That is really cool. And next, Dr. Hochter? Is that how we say it?
Dr. Thompson.
Yep,
Dr. Hochter-Thompson?
Dr. Hochter-Thompson.
Yeah. So my personal interaction with a fun, innovative technology was the Palm Pilot. It changed my life.
Really?
It did. But the one that I think changed the most in terms of my teaching experience was Hyper Studio. And it's the first time that I really saw student voice come out in the work that my students were producing. It just flipped the world on its side for them. And it changed students thinking about learning from being just a consumer of information and consumer of learning whatever the topic was, to really becoming creators. And that is when I saw how technology can impact and equal out education for students.
What version of Hyper Studio did you guys use? Just curious.
Version 1.
I'm sure it was
The only version of one.
Dang!
I only say that because
that
I helped develop version 4 of Hyper Studio
It must have been that
in
one.
the
If that was the
late
must-
90s,
yes.
early 2000s.
because HyperCard was first,
Right.
and then came Hyper Studio.
Yep.
Yeah, HyperCard.
Remember HyperCars?
Oh, God, I
that
loved
changed
it.
everything.
But HyperCard, I was still, as a teacher, very structured in what kids could put on each card and how
Right.
it needed to be organized. And the way that Hyper Studio changed was
You could
I
create transitions.
Well,
but
and-
it wasn't static.
I gave over more control
Right.
to kids, and I was blown away at what they could do
Yeah.
and where they took it. And that's what changed it for me. Yeah. And talk about equity.
Yeah.
Everybody could access it, and their
could put their
voices
voice
and
in
who
there.
they are
Yeah.
came out. Yeah, that's really what changed education for me.
That's really cool.
I don't know if we're going to go in order. Are we-
Either way, Patrick, if
Okay.
you're chomping at the bit, go for
No,
it.
no, I think, okay, so for me, I would say it's along the same lines of the Palm Pilot, but I think it was the BlackBerry. So I know that's more a fairly recent type of technology, but the BlackBerry was something that that was the first kind of iteration of a smartphone, which kind of made things more productive. You can get your calendar on it, you can get email, you could type on it. It had a full QWERTY keyboard.
Yeah.
So I think that, to me, was probably one of the most innovative things. Now, going back into time, I think the emergence of video games, I think, when I grew up, I was a latchkey kid, right? And so, my parents bought me a video game console because they wanted a babysitter, right?
Was it Atari?
No, it was actually in television.
Oh.
I don't know if you remember. It was
No.
in television was the one that had like a controller that had an overlay card. It had a little circle that you could just tap. It like it was horrible.
Pre-Atari.
Wow.
Thank you for dating me. Right back at you.
That was Simon Says, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I love Simon.
Or that funny little red thing that looked like a phone, Mr. Wizard or something
Yeah.
like that.
And I think in the classroom, I think the document camera in some ways was probably one of the first kind of things that actually was different.
Yeah, you said, "Give me that."
Give me that, yeah, give me that.
That
I
was
want
the first
that.
time I said, "I want that."
Yeah, because I remember teaching.
more?
Yeah, I remember teaching with transparencies.
Right.
Yeah.
No more
I remember,
marker
yeah.
on your hands,
Yeah.
on your lips,
Yeah.
on your eyebrows.
On your clothes.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves.
Yeah.
No,
We thought, but
I was a student when all that was around. So.
Oh, you were a student.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we're dating ourselves, and I'm going to say that my first experience. This is Pam Rabin. Was having an Apple IIe at home. So my mom was in a course at San Diego State. We got our first Apple IIe, dual floppy drives. She brought this thing home, and my sister and I really wanted to do something with it. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know how it worked. But you turn it on, you insert a floppy disk, you hear that sound come
Yeah, I remember that.
and then it's like boop, and there's nothing. And so we were like, what does it do, Mom?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, go get those books over there and they tell you what to do. So you got it switching out floppy disks, you type run hello, and then something would happen. And that was about the extent of what we had, though. We had some blank floppy disks that you could, I don't know if you call it burning, I don't remember what we called it back then. But in my mom's books, it taught us we taught ourselves, my sister and I, Apple Basic Integer, and we wanted to create choose your own adventure games.
Wow.
So it was all text.
Oh, fun.
They were horrible. I mean, they were truly just.
No, but that's like
You're standing in the middle of a graveyard. To your right is the Cave of Doom. To your left is, a giant shack, and in front of you is a house you suspect is haunted. The choices were never good, but we just loved creating it. We spent hours doing it. They eventually would just get so far into the code that they'd implode, kind of, and we'd start a new one. But it was what blew my mind about it was just sitting there dreaming about what the future could look like. So, we're creating, we're dreaming, we're thinking someday you're going to be able to see the haunted house that you're in, and just all the possibilities, and knowing that we could create something that would then work, and we could bring our friends over and they could try it. That's what really hooked me, and then trying to bring that experience into my classroom with my students. So I'm always driven by creation. What can students do? What can they produce?
Yeah.
It's great.
I want to see the new VR iteration
Yeah.
of
I know.
that.
I just been getting into
That would be really
CoSpaces.
cool.
Yeah. I went to ISTE. I got into CoSpaces, and I was like, oh, this is what I have to learn now.
Yeah.
Maybe some Unity in there at some point in time.
Ooh.
But CoSpaces first.
Yeah.
Cool. That would be another podcast.
Yeah.
That would be another
Our
one.
next step that we take.
There we go. We
Yeah,
can.
VR, AR.
When you talked about coding, I was thinking 10 print, Pam Raven, 20
Yeah,
to
well,
10,
my initials
and
are
then 30 is
PR.
run.
So
Yeah,
PR
sorry.
does AR and VR.
There you go.
Oh, nice. Ooh, that's really good.
Coding.
Coding.
Cool. Dr. Butters?
I'm gonna go way old school.
Uh-oh.
So back in the day, the San Diego Union Tribune used to have this page called the Kids Page, and I think it came out every Thursday. And it came out the mini page,
For all the kids
and
to work with.
there was something in it, and it was how to make a camera out of a oatmeal cylinder. And I remember showing it to my papa, and I said to him, I said, Papa, can we make this? Can we do this? And he read it, and he's like, yeah, we can do it. And it took a oatmeal cylinder. We had to paint it black. I still remember this distinctly in our backyard because we used a can spray paint. We had to use tin foil and poke it with a pin, and then we had to it had to stay there for like 20 minutes, and you had to stay still. And to me, that was really my first exploration in innovation, and how we could take all of these different products and make something that I could have never imagined. So that was my first thing that I ever did. And that's when I really understood what innovation was to me. The second thing that in my professional career was probably when my school district, I worked in Carlsbad, got the licenses for Gradebook Pro. And when Gradebook Pro
Shout out to Orbis Software.
and that blew my mind. It blew my mind, and it changed my entire course of my professional career, because I thought at the time, and I'm dating myself, this was 1992, and I thought, this software can make my job as a teacher so much easier. This is the best. And I signed up for the training, and I became the professional developer at my school, and I was the person they called to go help them in their room when they needed help. And then my big down came when I copied it on my floppy, and they wanted us to turn our grades in at the end of the year. And I handed my floppy over to my to the registrar of our district, and she goes, "I'm not going to accept this." And it was like a wah wah wah. She's like, "I want your grade book."
Oh wow!
And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And so that was my big innovation moment professionally, and it kind of changed the course of my professional career.
Wow!
Yeah.
Wow! It's really intriguing just to hear a lot of the stories of what really just transformed your lives as individuals, but then also in the classroom. I will say that, I mean, I started my career about to be 7 years ago, and I mean, even I myself, I'm like, all my sixth graders that were my sixth graders now, they're going to be graduating next year from high school, so now I'm entering that era where it's like, wow, this is really going to happen. But I'm never going to forget, one of the first things that I actually implemented in my classroom was Class Dojo. And it wasn't so much to regulate the behavior, but it was the very fact that, like, I have the opportunity to contact your parents, like, in the split second, like that, and they can respond just like that as well. But that revolutionized just that was just a complete game changer as far as parent involvement, and even being able to share, like, what was happening in the classroom, and even to the development of the whole program, becoming a Class Dojo mentor, creating student portfolios, and that whole digital portfolio piece that was trying to become really popular, and they started making and weaving away towards that. So, I mean, if there's one piece of technology, and I usually share this even with my student teachers, I'm like, this is that one thing you probably want, is because if you can get your parents on board, then you'll probably have a really, smooth year, as smooth as it can be. So, but that's probably mine. And then as far as just growing up, I mean, I could talk about the Game Boy or PlayStation 1.
Hey, those are coming back, actually. You know, like the retro games are really back in.
They are.
Yeah, PlayStation came out with their retro gaming console.
Well, I'm going to make my Choose Your Own Adventure games again.
Actually, those are good books, too.
They are good books. Those need to come back.
There's this great place in Minneapolis called Can Adventureland, and it's full of old pinball and Pac-Man machines and all of that, including a 18-hole mini golf. But it is so popular, there are lines out the door waiting to get into this place.
Well, that would be our next San Diego County Office Event Adventure. Maybe we do that in our cafeteria.
That's cool. With maybe a little Stranger Things theme in the back?
Please.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Pam, you can program it for us.
In Apple, basic
logo.
What was your tagline?
PR does VR and AR, I don't know.
Pam Raymond does VR.
Yeah, VR.
Cool.
So there are a few questions that I do want to focus on, and with this whole new idea and concept of innovation and creating opportunities for students to be creators and owners of educational experiences, it's sweeping the field. One of the things, and feel free to jump in right here, but where do you guys feel the shift happen when the focus of education made a turn from test scores to fostering more of that creativity within the learner? Like, there's been a lot of discussion of of really fostering more creativity and creating maker spaces and really giving student ownership and reflection. And when did this era, where do you guys feel it started happening? I mean, it could have been...
I think we're still in that shift, because sometimes I go around and I think, are we? Did we shift yet? There's so many pressures on classroom teachers, and when we're here at the county, it's really easy for us to see the need for a shift. But then thinking back to when I was in the classroom and all the pressures in the classroom, I think we're still working there. I think there's a lot of discussions going on. But for me, I think it really came around the time that you had a lot of people looking toward the future, asking, what if we did this? What are ways that we can help students? Why do we have such students who are feeling disenfranchised? Some of that came with technology, because I think the lives that kids were leading outside of school wasn't relevant or matching up to what was happening in school. So it's kind of, how do you bridge those two things? But I think when people really started thinking, I think everybody's talked about what the 21st century learning environment is going to be like. I don't think anyone's really debating that too much anymore, but that's around the time that we started thinking about how do we prepare kids for that, and how do we make school relevant.
The terms that often come up is the third and fourth industrial revolution. I think the emergence of all of these innovative tools came with the emergence of the internet as well as smartphones. I think that really was kind of the tipping point, if you will, from having a desktop computer, right, and having to go to a lab and having to go to a library to access information, to now having information accessible anywhere in the world, right? And so with the emergence of smartphones, I really feel that you can get information, you can get access to anything anywhere, and so that really changes the expectations, it changes the dynamics, it changes the landscape from what we expect from the economy, what we expect from companies, what we expect from education, what we expect from each other, right? And so, this always on, connected, information everywhere, knowledge is there. There's this knowledge economy that was generated from the internet, and I think now we're living in an attention economy where we're really striving for being relevant, right? And so education is one of those areas where we have to really kind of grasp and understand what that attention economy looks like, and say, okay, we're here, we've never gone away, critical thinking has always been a part of us. So now how do we tackle that aspect of the world?
I think the democratization of information, that anyone can create it and put it out there now. So there's a little bit of being sure that you have accurate information.
Right.
But there's also that sense that I have something to contribute, and there's an easy way for me to contribute. So I think back to when we were all kids and you had to write a report on koalas, what did we do? We go into the library and we relied on some expert somewhere on the planet that we didn't even know, in an encyclopedia that might have been published in 1942. So the information, if you had an encyclopedia that was within 10 years, that was considered relevant information. And now the information is so dynamic and changing and shifting, and you can get the latest, information automatically, and you can produce it. That's the thing that's...
I'm going to add to this. We had a couple of big, huge shifts. We had the introduction to the Common Core Standards, and then we had a new budgeting formula for the LCAP budget and then the LCFF budget. So we had those things going on, but simultaneously we also had charter schools coming in.
It's true.
And so we had a pressure in certain districts to, what are they doing? They're taking our kids, or we're losing our students to those schools. So we started investigating some of those schools. And they were doing some pretty outrageous things because they weren't tied to the same, as you mentioned here, the focus on test scores.
Right.
So they had a different focus, and I think that's where the beauty of charter schools actually is they have different, they had different requirements at the time. So we were able to follow some of their lead and change our practices to not focus on the test scores. But also, we had a few years where we weren't tied at all to state-regulated test scores. That gave us freedom. Let's just try things.
Right.
So we started trying things and seeing if it worked, seeing if it got kids engaged, seeing if our attendance went up, seeing if our graduation went up. So we were looking at all those things, and they're actually working. So our shift from test scores to creativity actually helped our students in the long run.
I started seeing changes probably about 8 years ago when I was in a lot of classrooms implementing at the time the Google Suite. It was really new, and I started seeing these spark and sparks in teachers' eyes when they saw that they could do this multi-collaboration across the board. And then they started talking about, you mean I can collaborate with teachers across the world, and I can then have students working together but not in the same space. And so I started seeing that it wasn't necessarily that the district or the school per se was saying, don't worry about test scores, but teachers started thinking out of that test score box a little more, and the teachers started becoming a little more creative with the different tools, and it was a lot of apps were getting thrown at them, and they were beginning to really see that there were other options out there besides those encyclopedias and the toolkit that they had been handed years ago, and so that's when I started seeing this real big shift in both creativity and then also kind of this rebellion towards test scores and whatnot. So
the parents were rebelling also.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were saying, well, all my child does is go to school to learn how to test. That's not learning.
Right.
So they're learning how to take a test, or they're preparing for a test, or they're the teacher's talking about the test. So it can't always be like that for my child.
So you started getting those rogue teachers
Right,
who were
yeah.
going to change everything
Yeah.
at their school, and then the good principals really utilized that and said, "Oh, take
Go
over,
with it."
take over."
Yep.
So
I think
that's
everyone in this room was probably a rogue teacher at one point.
Yeah.
I know I was.
I was actually thinking, I bet all of us were out of the classroom as mentors. You know, in some form, because you mentioned it, someone else mentioned, you walk out to, I'm going to go help you. Let's go, because I
Right.
love that.
Yeah.
I want to help you.
That
Let's
crazy
get better
passion
at it.
for,
Yeah.
let me share.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's a gadget. Let's play with it.
And I think that's what sparks that big change in education, is that you get those teachers that want to try the new thing, and then they start kind of bucking that system, and so it comes and goes. I think we're, like Pam said, we're still working on that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you touched on something with Common Core coming in. That's where I saw a huge shift in teachers' language around learning, and because our standards before were that knowledge base, right?
Right.
Do you know all the Latin and Greek roots and how to use them, right? Versus now, where students are expected to be creators and synthesizing information from all different sources and creating something to then put their theory of what this is out there. And teachers it took quite a while to dig into the Common Core standards and really figure out, what does that mean? And wait, how is this changing the curriculum that I have, and what do I do now, and what's available? And there wasn't anything available when we were first looking at standards, Common Core standards 9 years ago.
And that's when I started getting into OER, or Open Education Resources.
Yes.
Because we needed something, so we started using things and curating different things from the internet and sharing with our staffs. Because we don't have we don't have a adoption, but we're going to share this with you, and this is, and we vet it together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'll look at it and go,
And
this
that
is
is
the right
like
thing.
what innovation is. It's finding that need, figuring out ways to get around things. It's just looking at things in different ways in service
Solving a problem.
Solving a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What's a different way of looking? Here's a problem we have. We keep banging our heads against it. How do we put our heads together and get to the next level of a solution? But then keep iterating that. Keep changing that.
As
It's not the end all.
And as you're saying that, it's so interesting, because it took a lot of collaboration. I even remember in my grade level, to create these resources.
Yes.
But then this is also what we were expecting of our students. We would present a question, we would present a situation. All right, guys, let's collaborate, and they'd be like, "How?" and it's like, how do we do that? And it's like, well, this is. And there's moments where I'm sharing how I'm collaborating with my colleagues of how we're powering through this, and I'm like, wow, this is really a learning curve for. I mean, of course, we know it's going to be for our students, but for us. But in reality, it almost set us as teachers back into being a learner again. And being a learner is like, all right, how are we going to adapt this and make this successful for our students?
I hear that a lot in our online blended learning LEC certification, because teachers are like, whoa, I had to collaborate on a design thinking project. I didn't even know what design thinking was going into this, so I was having, my learning curve was high, and then I had to collaborate with people who weren't in the same building I'm in.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? And wow, it really opened my eyes to what we're expecting kids to do.
There's tears sometimes when that happens. They get so stressed.
Certainly lots of emails and hangouts online to help people through that, which is also great.
You know, it's funny. We also have to teach the innovation skills of how to think innovatively and how to think. The mindset of creativity. You can't just expect, okay, let's all be creative. How does it look? How, like, if you throw a bunch of materials on the ground to some kids and say, create something, they're stumped.
Right.
They just look at that and go, whoa, that's just a mess. But if you set it up properly to where you get kids to think that here's what they can do, and then give it to them, it just with a little bit of front loading. That's where talking about how to teach creativity and how to teach innovation.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I don't think it's necessarily an aptitude that everyone has
it's
naturally.
comfortable, right?
Right.
Exactly.
You know, but I do think if we believe in growth mindsets, that yes, you can definitely learn innovative, skills and techniques. And I don't think there's any one road to it. So we can ask what's best: STEAM, design thinking, project-based learning, which I think are all kind of embedded within each other. But there's, in terms of what we're doing. You guys, we have the messy.
Right.
And
which was actually one of the questions I wanted to finish off with, but
really.
Yeah. So go ahead and elaborate a little more on that.
Well, I'm going to let Aaron and Miss Ann elaborate on it because it was really their brainchild. But it's that idea that it's not just one thing, which is what I think is so amazing about what you've done in creating this network of teachers, is that we're bringing together all these different realms and saying it's okay to not have one that you focus on, but it's everything. It's messy.
So
it's I could add to this, and how we designed this is we sat at this room right now, and we have a big giant whiteboard in front of us, and we put up the words for making, entrepreneurship, and we started just brainstorming.
So what does messy mean?
We're going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
So you ready?
Yeah.
Messy is
making
entrepreneurship, STEAM, and inventing.
Yeah, so we put all the words together. We were trying. What's an acronym we could come up with? So
Yeah.
that alone, that to me was the innovative spirit of what we were doing. We were just creating something, and we wanted to find something, and we all kind of, literally at the same moment, we all looked at each other in the room and went, "Oh, messy! That's it."
Yeah.
So
It's messy.
I was gonna say it's like a metaphor, and it's literally it's like everything in it.
Exactly,
Wow.
Yeah,
So
and
you
it's igniting more innovation in teachers. Just since we had the symposium on Tuesday, a handful of teachers have come back either through email or as I've been walking
Twitter.
around in different places I've gone, and Twitter, my PLN, they're all talking about it and talking about how so many ideas and the light in their faces and the light in their voices and in their words that I'm reading, you can tell it's ignited something in people. And if it's igniting it in teachers, it's going to ignite it in kids.
Tell us a little bit about the symposium.
So the Messy Symposium was super, super cool because, first of all, it was in an amazing space, which is going to be the future home of the Comic-Con Museum
Very nice.
in Balboa Park. So very fun. Of course, we had to capture that superhero theme throughout. So we had...
You guys had some great names for the sessions, too.
Innovatropolis and...
Nice.
Yes, the lair. I can't
Was
remember.
it the messy layer? I don't know. It was the layer.
Layer of
something. I don't know.
something like that.
Their creativity
Activity.
and yes, we had a great time with that. We had an amazing opening session talking about the need for this creativity and collaboration and all these skills around the workforce and what kinds of jobs that we are helping to prepare students for. College and career, right? And what is needed in that. And so there were, like, you could feel, it was almost palpable in the room to say, yeah, we really need to be doing this. Let's go. And so everybody ran off to breakout sessions and they were amazing. Design thinking and drones and innovators mindset. And I mean, it was phenomenal. And everybody walked out of every single session going, oh, that was amazing, and I can't wait to ... And everybody had tons of ideas.
And we'll be doing that again next year.
Yeah, and that's what I was
Good.
going to say. Is I think that's one of the ways that we define innovation in some ways, is that innovation is not just an event, right? It's a process, right? We have to really learn about that process. It's the mindset. It's the ability to create. I often say that innovation can be categorized into two categories. It's like there's a product innovation and a process innovation. And so like when you think about teaching strategies, right? That's really process related, and then how does that translate into the outcomes that you want to achieve? So I think that's awesome.
And it's translated into our prototyping
Yeah.
work that we do now.
And I also think innovation is so unique to every individual person.
Right.
I think that what could be super innovative to me, because I like to think that the ed tech team and the innovation division here at the county office is kind of on the cutting edge of it. What I would think would be innovative could be so far in the future for someone else.
Right.
And I think about some of our classroom teachers, and in particular, I think about my mom, who taught for National School District for 40 years. And what was really innovative for her when she was teaching was the first time she could put together a PowerPoint presentation.
Wow.
And she was super proud of that. And that was huge for her. And it took all her skills at that time. Granted, she was able to gather more skills, but for me to say that wasn't innovative because we were already in this new iteration of tools wouldn't have been fair to her. And I always think about how we're doing things that are innovative, and everybody's going to kind of take their own little piece of it, from the Messy, from our leadership summits, from our online virtual summits. They're going to take their own piece of that and make it as innovative as they are comfortable with. And that's the beauty of, I think, having an innovation department that can span the wide range of skills that we have in San Diego County.
Your point
And
is
beyond.
so important to say also that there's access
Absolutely, yeah.
in every way for every single human being,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Laying the equalizing
Yeah.
the educational playing field, if you will.
Yeah, and you can't be innovative without being inclusive. So you have to have diverse viewpoints, diverse ideas.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's the only way that you can be innovative.
And we have to give the people who are trying something very new and very different success points and celebrations for what they're doing and how they're doing it, because it could be so new for them and different that they've never had that opportunity before.
Yep.
Right.
And speaking of innovation projects, we have another project coming up in November, and we're going to be showcasing a lot of innovative products from around the region, and it's going to be right here at the San Diego County Office of Ed on November 2nd?
First.
I'm sorry, November 1st, and we'll be highlighting all kinds of innovative projects and products, drones and 3D printers. And Michelle, do you want to speak at all to that?
We're going to be talking about how learning spaces are shifting in terms of in how they meet and exceed, right? How they help students to succeed and really meet the learning goals, learning objectives,
Right.
and student overall wellness as a learner in them. And they can be, they're not just within four walls.
Right.
That
If I can get some AR or VR in there,
Yeah, I think the key
It's
there.
just on the plan.
The key there is intentionality,
PR,
right?
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, making sure that everything that is designed, that we select, that is taught, is done with intentionality around outcomes and.
Right, not just, I think we've gone through a time period where there's been so many amazing tools and
Right.
gadgets.
Right,
and,
right.
And I am a gadget fiend, my husband can attest. I love all the gadgets. However, where's the intention behind what we select and how we set things up
Yeah.
and
Right,
how we
right.
support student learning? So this is a super exciting initiative that's happening, and you're in on the...
That's the hot scoop.
That is
We haven't
really.
gotten advertised this
Oh
yet.
wow! All right. Well, I guess our listeners listeners have to listen to the entire show in order to figure out this little piece right here.
Yeah.
Well, you hit on something very, very important, and I'm never going to forget even my first year teaching, and I feel like this should be for any brand new teacher, but it's the whole idea of being intentional with the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, and why does this bring apart? Because I'm never going to forget even introducing the whole idea of like Google expeditions to like, bring it up to my first principal, Dr. Dan Winters, and I brought like, we should bring this into class, or even the Google Glass. He said, I love it. He said, but what's the purpose of it? And I'm like, and as my first year teacher, I was like, let me get back to you on that. So, but it's revolutionized my thinking. Like, I love seeing gadgets, but immediately now the question comes like, okay, what's the purpose of that?
Yeah.
And then how can I use that? And so that intentionality of it, and even working with the Innovation Station, and directing, because we were so far as, and even Qualcomm, when I was at the Think a Bit Summit, we talked about how, we have students making projects with servos and Arduinos and everything. And it's like, all right, think of any problem in the whole world. And it's like, well, some of their problems were like, it's like, okay, they were very, either very similar, or they weren't thinking really out as far as like what our society is really dealing with.
But that is their world, though.
That is their world.
And I worked at a district that we had a very, very high population of students that had lived in extreme poverty. Their world is knowing where they're going to get food, and how they're gonna, if they're gonna walk to school safe. So we posed a question like that, and we were also like, they're gonna save the world. No, they want to be able to walk to school safely. It's,
right.
It's like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
that is their world,
Yeah.
and that's their innovation of what they need to solve. That's the problems they need to solve.
Right. And then, so even as we started bringing those ideas up, we started noticing a lot of the situations that we started noticing was homelessness there in Chula Vista.
Yeah.
That was huge, and we didn't take anything away from that. However, we also added another component, though, as far as like, we also deal with wildfires. We also deal with earthquakes. We deal with water pollution, and these are things that are hitting San Diego, like right now. And even this afternoon, we had that earthquake. All our phones went off at one time. For that, and it works.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting because there's students out there that are thinking to themselves like, I want to create an app that warns people before an earthquake happens, and I'm like, that just happened today. That testing is happening.
Somebody made that app.
Somebody's making it. So we live in the era where innovation and the idea of making mistakes and getting messy, no pun intended, is being embraced.
Very funny. We like the funny.
Thank you. Yeah.
Keep it fun.
But I want to thank every one of you guys. We're already past our 30-minute segment. So those of you guys that held on these last 7 minutes, thank you so much. But I want to thank every single one of you guys for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. Does anyone have maybe one more thing to just say, or any idea that you want to just maybe give a last piece of encouragement to the teachers probably listening to this as they get ready for the next school year?
What's our webpage?
Our webpage is www.innovatesd.org. So visit us and find out about latest events.
Follow our hashtag,
Yep.
which is #InnovateSD.
Yep.
As well as #GetMessy.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you to all our listeners tuning in today. Please feel free to send an email to cbgarcia@sandiego.edu with questions or topics of discussion. And also be sure to follow us at social media at InnovativePEDAG on Twitter. I will have all the links to all the resources that were shared today and all the news. Thank you guys again, and thank you, San Diego County Office of Ed Innovation Department. Thank you guys. Have a great one.
Thank you.